Welcome to episode 3 of the J&J Podcast. I'm Jamie.
This is Jameson.
And I want to welcome everybody in. I was out last week, a little bit under the weather, but I want to give a shout out to Zach, our producer, for filling in for us.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that, Zach. Last week while I was out, we made a prediction for our Thursday night game between the Falcons and the Bucks. And that's going to be our first topic for today. We're going to kick off. First on the docket is the Falcons-Bucks game on Thursday night. Jameson, I'm going to pass this over to you. What were your thoughts?
First off, I would say shout out to Mr. Swag Surf himself, Mr. Kirk Cousins, 500 passing yards. It was actually insane to see, and I was actually I know I predicted the Falcons to win that game. I don't think anybody predicted for Kirk Cousins to throw over 500 passing yards. And also, I got to give a huge shout out to Darnell Mooney, too. The game that he had, just, 2 touchdowns, all the receiving yards was absolutely insane. And I will say this, I just think going forward, the Falcons, like I've said this at the start of the year, they've honestly clicked very fast. And I feel like going forward, they really have a chance to, continue to make some noise in that division and also just in the NFC in general because they have a balanced offense. They have a really good defense. You can tell that, the players really want to play for their coach, brand new, first-time head coach. But that's a team come playoff time that, the Vikings, some of these other teams are not going to want to play. So, going to keep my thoughts brief on that. But just overall, that might have been the best single game I've seen Kirk Cousins play, throughout his career. So, huge shout out to him and, the Atlanta Falcons.
That's good stuff. Kirk Cousins, one thing we know about him, he's going to put up numbers.
Yeah.
When he was with the Vikings, even when he was with the, I think they were the Commanders at the time. No, they weren't the Commanders.
The Redskins.
Yeah, they were the Redskins then.
Mm-hmm.
He's always going to put up good numbers.
Yeah.
Does it always equate to wins? That's the question. But that was impressive on Thursday night. So shout out to Kirk Cousins.
For sure.
Moving on to the next topic, Jameson, what are your thoughts? So the hubbub around the league right now is about the Davante Adams trade and where he might end up and what team he might end up landing on. Everybody's talking about the Jets, and we'll discuss that a little bit later because of what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. But I've got some thoughts about where I think he might end up. Some of the stuff that I'm seeing on social media, some of the hubbub that I'm hearing is the Baltimore Ravens might be one of the teams, which would be ridiculous. But I want your thoughts on that. Like, where do you think he might end up?
Honestly, I'm gonna answer this question 2 ways. I'm gonna tell you where I think he should go, and where I would love to see him end up, and where I genuinely overall think he's gonna end up. But first, I'll say the team that I really want to see him on is the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know that sounds a little insane. And they will have to do a lot with their salary cap to try to actually make that happen. But, right now, them not having Rashee Rice for the rest of the season, Isaiah Pacheco's out. Really, their go-to option at wide receiver is Xavier Worthy, which, he's a good player, but outside of his speed, he doesn't really have, the whole route tree mastered yet. So I feel like bringing somebody in like Davante Adams, who still, even at his age, is arguably still the best route runner in all of football. Bringing somebody in like that for Patrick Mahomes, I feel like they would immediately, mesh and gel and develop chemistry very fast. And also, too, that's a move that if the Chiefs make, imagine if they're still able to, keep him next year, having Rashee Rice and Davante Adams and Xavier Worthy, that, puts them right back in the Super Bowl discussion if they're not already in Super Bowl discussion right now. Given their record. But that's the team I want to see him go to. The team I actually think he's going to end up on is probably the New York Jets. I know that's been rumored even, heading back to last season, that whole connection that he had with Aaron Rodgers. But if I was a betting man, like if I was on Underdog Fantasy right now, I would be taking the odds on, Davante Adams ending up with the New York Jets. Because honestly, looking at how stagnant their offense has been, they actually need him as well. So we'll see what happens. But I do feel like, according to reports, that trade is going to happen sooner rather than later. Maybe, even as soon as like the next couple of days. But want to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, it's probably going to be the Jets.
Yeah.
I think there's some wishful thinking that he might end up with the Ravens. Um, Lamar Jackson has shown that he can make whoever they have look really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see whether or not Aaron, how much power Aaron Rodgers actually has, because I know that's who he really, really wants. Garrett Wilson had a good game, but they're still stagnant on offense. So I think it probably will be the Jets. Personally speaking, I hope it's not the Chiefs. They get enough help as it is. We'll talk about that later. But I think it more than likely will be the Jets as well. So yep.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to another game that, and I started talking about the Commanders last week, and Jaden Daniels, and even before the season, like I told people, I was like, he was my pick for Rookie of the Year, and on top of that, I feel like just long term, as good as Caleb Williams is, I just feel like Jaden Daniels is going to have a longer career. But we have to talk about the Commanders-Browns game because, heading into that game, I feel like a lot of people, of course, picked the Commanders. The way they've been playing, they just been clicking on all cylinders. But I did not expect for the Browns to just roll over like that and get mollywopped. So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I have been very, very impressed with Jaden Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
I think yesterday what did he do? He's had our no player in NFL history has ever had 1,000+ passing yards and 250 rushing yards in their first five career games.
Yeah.
Until Jaden Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cowboys everybody expected the Cowboys to be the team out of the NFC East this year. I honestly, when I look at the Commanders, I look at their defense. I look at the fact that he is already 2 years probably ahead of schedule with how he's, distributing the football. It's not just, he's finding his tight end. He's spreading the football around. And then you got to give props to the running back,
Yeah,
Robinson.
Brian Robinson. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to give props to him because he has been consistent. I actually had him on my fantasy team a couple of years ago, and that dude won me by himself a couple of games because he was just, constantly consistent. So I think that they're making some noise. It'll be interesting to see if he can keep this momentum. But I think because they have a good running game, their defense is solid. Cowboys might be in trouble.
Yeah.
I think the Commanders actually could win the NFC East.
No, I completely agree. And just watching that game yesterday, it's like I even said this last week. Like Cliff Kingsbury has really simplified the offense for Jaden Daniels, and he's playing to his strengths. And then on top of that, it's like you have a run game with Brian Robinson. Austin Eckler is still, a really good running back, solid running back. And then on top of that, like you mentioned, their defense. Like I got to give a huge shout out to Frankie Louvu, the former Panther, what he did yesterday. Putting up insane numbers on the defensive end and just, overall, he had a fantastic game. And I just feel like going forward, looking at that division, the Eagles, they haven't figured out their offense right now. And also just looking forward to it's just like the Commanders' schedule is not as hard as the Cowboys is. But yeah, so the Commanders are very scary, and right now it's just they're playing with a whole lot of confidence, and they don't really have a lot of pressure on them right now. So that's also a recipe for success for them going forward.
Very quickly, though, in that game, the Browns, I'm going to have to admit it. I had thought that Deshaun Watson, and I know that Chubb is potentially coming back within the next couple of weeks. I don't know that that's going to matter because they're not looking good at all. Deshaun Watson has lost a step. I think it's time for the Jameis Winston experience.
No, I completely agree. Because they even showed yesterday. No, my fault. Go ahead.
No, not just the experience, but the experiment. They always want to say it's an experiment. Here's one thing I know about Jameis Winston, and I will say this. I said it probably 2 weeks ago. I felt like if the Dolphins went out and tried to get somebody in free agency, not free agency, but via trade, that it should be Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
You've got Tyreek Hill, you've got Waddle, you've got guys who can stretch the field. one thing we know about Jameis Winston is he's going to sling the rock. And at the end of the day, they're not getting any downfield passes. Deshaun Watson looks, unfortunately, like a shell of himself. So I think that it's time for the Jameis Winston experience.
No, I agree because they even showed yesterday, like pregame in the huddle, it wasn't even Deshaun Watson, talking to the players, hyping them up. It was Jameis Winston. So overall, I think, of course, I feel like a lot, and the coach already said that they're gonna, stick with him. Kevin Stefanski said they're gonna stick with him long term, Deshaun Watson. But I think it's time for him to rev up those fryers because from what I've been seeing, Deshaun Watson just ain't the answer long term, and it sucks because I was rooting for him this season, but he really has no excuses. Like, he has a good wide receiver room. He has a good tight end. Like you said, they're about to get Nick Chubb back, but it's really not going to matter because his play has been so pedestrian. But like on the flip side, another quarterback that I want to talk about and just get your thoughts on as well is Caleb Williams. I know we were just talking about Jaden Daniels, but he put up 304 passing yards yesterday. 2 touchdowns. He really looked, just week to week, him and Jaden Daniels have honestly just both looked way more comfortable from week to week. It's just, with more experience comes, more calmness, I feel like, for both quarterbacks. But the reason why I also feel like that was such a big performance and a lot of people aren't talking about it is, like, the Panthers, that trade that they made to get Bryce Young allowed the Bears to get Caleb Williams. So to see, like, it's sad, it's not his fault, but to see Bryce Young on the bench yesterday and Caleb Williams putting up crazy numbers like that, it was kind of disheartening to see as, like, someone rooting for Bryce Young. But I do think long term, Caleb Williams is still going to continue to put up numbers. And like you said, like we've mentioned this in the past, he has all the weapons to be successful, especially, once they get Keenan Allen back, it's wraps.
Yeah, I think Caleb Williams is just getting more comfortable. I think he is. Well, here's the other part. DJ Moore.
Yeah, he's
Again,
special.
for personal reasons and for selfish reasons, he's on my fantasy football team,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm glad to see Caleb Williams starting to, find him and showcase him because DJ Moore, imagine if he were still with the Carolina Panthers.
Yep.
So Caleb Williams has found his sweet spot. I think he's more comfortable, and I think repetition. Like you were saying, I think with more repetition, he'll get better. He's going to still have those ups and downs because he's a rookie and he's still learning the NFL game. Some of the stuff that he was able to do at the college level, you've got grown men now on the other side of football.
Yeah.
So he won't be able to get away with some of that stuff, but those are the things that made him special. And once he finds that, that sweet spot and that comfort level, I've just, Jaden Daniels to me really, I won't say it's a surprise. I just think the fact that he's been able to figure it out so quickly. And, NFL is a game of ebbs and flows. Might he still have some games where he doesn't play really, really well? Even yesterday, I mean, there were times when it seemed like, he might not have been able to get the ball up the field. Then he did it with his legs. I know Caleb Williams can do that too. But I think to your point, Jaden Daniels has found his comfort level a little bit faster. But
I
they're both
agree.
special. They're both special.
Speaking of a team that I feel like has found their comfort level, somewhat is the Dallas Cowboys. Last night, I mean, I'm not gonna over exaggerate because like I said, we were just talking about how we feel like the Commanders are gonna win that NFC East division. But I will say last night, something that the Cowboys did find that they hadn't been able to find in previous games was the run game. Shout out to Dottle, man. That brother went off last night. Not only was he, getting a lot of rushing yards, but he caught a touchdown as well. Had, a decent amount of receiving yards. And I will say this, looking at the Steelers, I really do think Justin Fields is the answer long term for them. Even though they lost, it's like some of the plays that he made last night, just especially with his legs, Russell Wilson just unfortunately cannot make those type of plays anymore. But something to monitor for the Cowboys too going forward is Dak and CeeDee Lamb still don't look like they're on the same page so far to start off this season. And some of that's to be expected because CeeDee Lamb really set out a training camp, trying to get his contract. So I feel like there was a lot of valuable time that they missed this offseason. But it's like, if you're gonna make Dak Prescott the highest paid quarterback, and then CeeDee Lamb's one of the highest paid wide receivers, they have to get on the same page going forward, because as good as Dowdle played yesterday, it's like he's not gonna be able to do that every game. And it's like, they're putting a lot of pressure on CeeDee Lamb to be good, and I think he can be, but if, him and Dak are on the same page, they're not going to be able to be successful and win games going forward. So, if they can keep this up with the run game, they'll be able to win, a handful more of games, through to finish out the year. But that relationship between Dak and CeeDee, they got to go and get that, going sooner rather than later, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Does anybody know what CeeDee Lamb was saying last night when Dak ignored him?
I saw that. I still don't know what he
Yeah,
was saying, but he looked very, upset.
yeah, he mouthed something, and I'm not sure exactly what he said, but
Didn't he say
it was
subpar throw Dak?
that's what it was.
Yeah.
Subpar throw Dak. Okay, because there were different things floating around today. I was like, there was somebody else that said something weird, and I was like, that can't be what he said.
Yeah.
But the fact that I just have to say this, the fact that the Cowboys are winning games and their superstars aren't shining, like Tolbert was the star of the game last night. Um,
Yeah.
he and CD haven't gotten on the same page yet, but they're winning with what's the other guy's name? Lipsky.
Yeah,
Um,
that the fullback. He's been making
the
some
fullback.
crazy plays.
Right. Like, I mean, looks like Bill Bates from back in the day. Like, I mean, what teams have fullbacks anymore?
No, you're right.
And what what teams have fullbacks that are actually, contributing and
Yeah.
scoring? So I thought that was impressive. They toughed it out on the road. That was an impressive win. So I have to give them a little bit of credit. I just don't see anybody beating the Commanders. And real quickly shifting to the Steelers for just a hot second, I agree with you. I think Justin Fields is the answer for the future. Um, there are some rumors floating around that they may actually move on from Russ, which I think would be stupid.
Yeah.
But I think Justin Fields has cemented, the starting position. He didn't play the best game yesterday, but he had them in a position to win the game. Dak
Exactly.
just made a really good play at the end.
Yeah. And also, too, I'm praying that we don't ever have another Sunday night football game that lasts until literally the next day. That joint ain't go off till 1 in the morning. So, but yeah, that was
Yeah,
a
Mike
big.
Mike Tirico said, "Good morning, football."
Yeah, like
Like,
that's insane.
come on, man.
Um,
Um,
But yeah, shifting to another quick game that, honestly, first off, I'm impressed that Jordan Love is even back as fast as he was. So I remember watching that injury he suffered against the Eagles in week 1. Um that was, the fact that he's actually out there playing and making plays is very impressive. But I know you want to kind of talk about Jordan Love a little bit, so I'll go and let you do that.
yeah, Jordan Love to me, and I know there were some, sketchy plays, but the pass, and there were two passes to me yesterday that were made that were spectacular. And I have to talk about the pass to Reed. I keep forgetting Reed's first name. Um, but he made a pass. First of all, he shouldn't have thrown it. It was in triple coverage, but the pass was so perfect. Like he looked like, he looked like what Aaron Rodgers used to look like. And I know that they're different. They're different, quarterbacks. But that pass was impressive.
Hmm.
And I don't think enough people are talking about the way that he lofted the ball. It literally went over. There was a linebacker there too, but it literally went right around. The two corners landed right in the bread basket. That was an impressive play to me. He outplayed Stafford
Yeah.
when he needed to. Stafford, known for comebacks. I think he might have the record for the most um, comebacks for a Rams quarterback, and I'm pretty sure he's in the top 10 for comebacks. But the way that Jordan Love kept that team together, and I have to show a little bit of love to Jacobs as well because he didn't have a crazy run game, but he did just enough to keep the Rams off the field. So wanted to give a shout out to Jordan Love because that pass to me was very impressive.
Yeah, speaking of very impressive, and I'm biased because I'm rooting for Lamar Jackson. He's my favorite player, but the game that I was really looking forward to, and it was nothing short of spectacular, was the Ravens versus Bengals game, and I will say that was one for the ages. Like the quarterback play from both Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson was very impressive, but this is what I've been saying about Lamar Jackson. I said this on like episode 1 of the podcast. I said, of course, the recipe for success for the Ravens is just continue to run the ball going forward. But yesterday you saw whenever they weren't able to establish a run at first early in the game with Derrick Henry, they literally just they kind of relied on Lamar Jackson to be Superman, and he did just that. I mean, 4 passing touchdowns, 340 passing yards. Like, he was a little bit short of 350 passing yards, but an insane passer rating. Like, and the play that really stood out to me, man, was they were down 10. He fumbled the ball on the snap, recovered it. He literally evaded two defenders, was running to the right sideline, and lofted it up to Isaiah Likely just on the money. It's like a play you would make in Madden. It's like he had Gunslinger on that play activated, and just like it looked like backyard football. But Lamar Jackson is special, man. And in a game like that, what it shows is that Lamar Jackson, when they need him to step up and be able to make plays and throw the football like he genuinely can. Like, overall, he outplayed Joe Burrow to me, and that's saying a lot because Joe Burrow and that connection he had with Jamar Chase yesterday was absolutely insane. And I will say this, I genuinely feel bad for Bengals fans because that's another game, like I've said, they should have beat the Chiefs early on this season, and now honestly they should have beat the Ravens yesterday. The fact that McPherson missed that field goal kick at the end, was very disheartening. But also too, just shout out to Justin Tucker, and then I got to give a huge shout out to Marlon Humphrey. That interception that he made late in the game, really gave the Ravens a chance to win that game. So yeah, like overall, like I've said, I think the Ravens are right now the best team in the entire NFL, and I feel like they're the team to beat. And it just proves my point even more just seeing their performance yesterday. Overall as a team. But your thoughts?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson he may win another MVP.
Yeah.
That's how good he's playing. I like the relationship that he and Derrick Henry have. I saw them after the game talking, and I saw how happy Derrick Henry was. He didn't have the best game, but he had a 50-yard run when it counted,
Yep.
when they needed it most.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too so that play that you're talking about when Lamar Jackson basically threw the ball as he was falling out of bounds. What impressed me the most about that was the stiff arm. I think Kevin Harlan was calling the game, and he said he threw him like a rag doll. It was hilarious. And so I look at that, and then the kick, the holder for McPherson,
Yeah, he's sold.
He was a rookie, and so for him, I felt bad for Joe Burrow, but I'm impressed because if you look at what Lamar Jackson has done, the two teams that everybody said, oh, he's got to get beyond, the Bengals and the Bills, he has now beaten them back to back.
Yep.
I think he's 9-1 against Joe Burrow.
He is,
and is it 4-0 at home? I'm saying for at Cincinnati, he's 4-0.
Yeah.
So he's the king of Cincinnati right now. He's the king of Baltimore, but he's also the king of Cincinnati because he's owned the Bengals. So I think an impressive win. I think they need to keep running the ball, and I think Harbaugh's got to still make some adjustments because some of these games he's had to be the hero when he doesn't always have to be. If some of the play calling was a little bit better, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We'll see how the season progresses and whether or not I think John Harbaugh deserves to continue to be the head coach because I have some really, really deep thoughts about that. So
no, I agree. And the last thing I'm gonna say about that was to allude to your point about some of the play calling. Like, there was a point because I have Derrick Henry on my fantasy team, and he didn't even play him at all to start off the second half. Like, until he put him back in until the very near end of the game late in the fourth quarter, like he was literally on the bench. So stuff like that just cannot happen. I know they didn't have the run game going, but it's Derrick Henry for crying out loud.
Agreed.
But last thing last NFL game I did want to talk about was the early morning game in London. The Vikings ended up, winning really kind of a nail biter against the Jets. And the fact that the Jets were even still in that game just, kind of shows you that, their defense has been playing phenomenal. But like I said earlier, their offense is in dire need of some help right now. But Aaron Rodgers, man, I know he threw 3 interceptions, but he genuinely had a chance to win that game down the stretch. And I will say for the Vikings going forward, man, they're still just finding a way to win games. So that's another team where, their defense has been phenomenal and they just got Jordan Addison back. So I feel like they'll be scary long term. But if the Jets are unable to get Devontae Adams, man, like their season really, Robert Saw is probably going to lose his job because their offense sucks. I'm sorry. It stinks.
I agree. Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old, and yesterday he looked like it. He's throwing interceptions all over the place. I saw a crazy stat of quarterbacks who have thrown for their career pick sixes. Aaron Rodgers has only thrown 5. I think Peyton Manning, Eli Manning were in like the 30s. 27 was, I think, Eli. Aaron Rodgers has thrown only 5. And he threw one yesterday. He doesn't do this very often. So, yeah, I know that they need some additional help, but I also think you have a 41-year-old quarterback. And we've heard the phrase Father Time. Father Time is undefeated. Could he use some help? Yes. Can he still make some throws? Yes. But he's not the same guy that he used to be. And I think the sooner people realize that, the better off they'll be. Sure, if they get some additional help, Devontae Adams will help out a lot. That will relieve some of the pressure. But I also think he's trying to make passes that he shouldn't be making. His decision making has been a little bit suspect as of late. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to get somebody else in there to help him out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then speaking, I know we're kind of disappointed with Aaron Rodgers' performance, but speaking of disappointments, we're just gonna go and transition over to college football and just the talk of the weekend, man. Vanderbilt upsetting Alabama, man. I'm still blown away by that. Um, of course, I'm about to go and get your thoughts in a second, but even like I was watching that game early on when Bama was down like 21-7 before halftime. I remember even saying to myself, like, bro, there's no way Alabama's gonna lose. Like, they're gonna find a way to end up winning that game. But the fact that they ended up losing that game is just honestly, I will say it could be a blessing in disguise for them because, like you said, like we've talked about, this is still their first year with a brand new head coach, brand new system. And with the new college football playoff format, it's like you rather lose the game like that now than lose it, later on come playoff time. But honestly, it looks like, we've always talked about this. You can never play down to your opponent. And it's just from the opening snap, it's like it really looked like to me like Alabama really didn't come to play. And by the time they, tried to wake up and make some plays near the, second half into that game, it was too little too late. But yeah, your thoughts.
Yeah, I just think it's the Nick Saban era is over, and I think that there are going to be some surprises because there's a standard that people have come to expect with Alabama. I think you're right; they played a little bit down to their competition, but you have to come to play. You have to be prepared to play every game. Your opponent like it's one of your last games, or like you're trying to make it to the championship. I still think, to your point, that they'll be okay. They certainly can't lose anymore. But to put it into perspective of how big of a deal it is, I think they were interviewing Lane Kiffin in the Ole Miss game, and they were asking Lane Kiffin questions. He wasn't even paying attention to the questions that were being asked in the presser. He was like, "I'm sorry, guys, this is a once in a lifetime thing, and I'm just paying attention to. Wow, they're out of time." Literally, he was saying this. Wow, Alabama has one timeout left. That's crazy. It's ridiculous to think that Alabama's going to lose that game, but it happens, and so it's a new era. I think people just have to make that adjustment and know that Alabama will be okay. They get the best recruits. They bring in top talent all the time. So I think they'll be fine.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And another team I want to talk about, and they're literally 6-0 right now, is Miami, man. Shout out to Cam Ward. He's another person where like he should be in the talk for the Heisman, but we have Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty, so his name's not going to be brought up as much. But I'm telling you, continue to keep an eye on Miami because they're 6-0. Like their confidence is continuing to rise, and the fact that they came back down 25 points against Cal, that's a huge win. And some of the plays that Cam Ward made in that second half are just absolutely outrageous. But I'm telling you something I better never see again in my life is Michael Irvin again on the sideline like that. Um, I don't know if you saw that video of him on the sideline, but
I did.
yeah, I was like that brother. I better never see nothing like that again in my life. Like that I don't even want to say what that reminded me of because it was just absolutely insane. And you already know where I'm about to where I'm potentially was gonna go with that. But
Don't go there.
no, I'm not going to. But the fact that Miami was able to close out, come back and win that game, because that was a very high scoring game. They put up 39 points to Cal's 38. But Cam Ward is special, man, and like their wide receiving core is honestly very good as well. And then that's one of those type of games where it just shows like it proves to a coach that your team really wants to fight and can fight through adversity because come college football playoff time, like things are not always going to go your way. But one thing I will say about Cam Ward is he's probably the most poised quarterback in all college football. Like he seems to never really get rattled either. So huge shout out to Cam Ward and the Miami Hurricanes, and I'm just very excited to see them continue to ball out the rest of the season. So huge shout out to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um.
Um,
So
the
go
next
ahead.
thing I want to go and transition to is the WNBA. Because yesterday, and I'll go and get your thoughts on this too. But the Liberty were actually able to close out their series against the Las Vegas Aces. Once again though, huge shout out to the Aces, man. Like they dealt with a lot of injuries this year. Asia Wilson arguably had the single best season we've ever seen. But the fact that they were still able to make that a series and make that pretty competitive, you know, was really good. But I will say this, depending on who wins, the Lynx Sun game tomorrow, man, I just don't see either one of those teams, man, beating the Minnesota. I mean, not the Minnesota Lynx, the New York Liberty. Just the chemistry that they're playing with. Brianna Stewart's gonna do her thing. Sabrina Ionescu's been going crazy. And then even on top of that, somebody like their rookie Phoebish, like the way she's been able to shoot the ball and be able to stretch the floor. I just don't see the Sun nor the Lynx just being able to match up with them and winning 3 out of 5 games. But I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So shout out to Asia Wilson. I think she had a fabulous season. I still don't think the WNBA promoted her enough. I think somebody who scored over 1,000 points, had her team in position to win, to do a three-peat. I think the WNBA still needs to show her some more love. I agree with you. It's going to be interesting to see how the Lynx, because Nafisa Collier is a problem.
Yeah.
When I watched her in the Olympics, I was thinking, wow, she's a little, still trying to figure out where she fits in. And then she, in
Tried to
these,
tell you.
you did, and in these playoffs, I was like, oh, okay, I see now. I
Mm.
mean, the fadeaway jumper, she gets you on her hip. She's got ridiculous footwork. So I really do feel like the Liberty are the team to beat now. But I also think if the Lynx were to get past the Sun, I think the Lynx would give the Liberty more problems than the Sun will.
Yeah.
I think the Sun go too long without being able to score, and
Exactly.
you know what I'm saying. And so I think that if you look at what the Lynx can do, Nafisa Collier can get you buckets regardless. She can shoot from the outside. She's got a mid-range game. She can put you on the post. And I honestly thought Alyssa Thomas was gonna really be able to handle her. She's been cooking her.
Yeah.
Uh, that's the only way
Even
that
though
I
they
can
lost
describe
yesterday, she had 29. So
it. I know that's what I'm saying. So I agree with you. I think the Liberty are the team to beat. There's no doubt. But I think that of the two teams that are left, if the Lynx get past the Sun, I think they'll give the Liberty a better series.
Yeah.
Do I think the Liberty are going to win overall win the whole thing? I do. They've got too many weapons. They found their chemistry at the exact right time. Brianna Stewart's a problem.
Yeah.
Ionescu's a problem. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, who comes out of the Sun and the Lynx.
Well, speaking of that, what's your prediction for tomorrow's game? My prediction is, and this is tough, man, but I'm gonna rock with the Minnesota Lynx. I just feel like they're gonna come out tomorrow. They're gonna play really good defense. Yeah, I think they're gonna genuinely play really good defense. I think Nafisa Collier will at least get 25 to 30 points, and I feel like the problem for the Sun tomorrow is going to be, like you said, just keeping up scoring wise. But that's also my concern for the Lynx, because if Nafisa Collier doesn't get 25 or 30 points against the Lynx, they have no chance. Kayla McBride, she's a bucket, but she hasn't really, had any, standout dominant performances so far in the playoffs. And it's just like the Liberty have too many scoring threats, man. Whether it be Jonquel Jones, Brianna Stewart, Ionescu, Courtney Vandersloot is, giving them a spark in a lot of games. So we'll see what happens. But who do you think is going to win tomorrow? My pick's the Lynx.
Yeah, I've got the Lynx too. And the reason I have the Lynx is because they actually can play defense. They have the ability because especially on the perimeter. And Nafisa Collier, obviously a defensive player of the year. We can talk about that later, whether or not we felt like that. I honestly felt like Asia Wilson could have been
I agree.
MVP and defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
But I'm not taking anything away from Nafisa. No. And I honestly think she may be MVP next year.
Yeah, we were talking about that. She's my early pick for MVP next year as well. So she's insane. She's special.
Yeah, so my prediction is the Lynx as well. I hope it's good. Honestly, I'll just say I hope it's the Lynx, because I really think that they're going to give the Liberty a better series.
I agree. So, I don't want to see the Sun, because they might mess around and get swept by the Liberty. I think the Lynx will actually keep those games, somewhat competitive, and it's also good to see a fresh and up and coming team like the Lynx in the finals. You know what I'm saying, from a marketing perspective.
Agreed.
So yeah,
cool.
Well, speaking of predictions, I want to segue it over to the NBA. Jay Jameson, I know that you're a big Lakers fan. Obviously, we talk about that a lot. So I want a realistic, unbiased prediction for how Bronny and the Lakers are going to play this year.
I'm going to be honest with you. Just watching the 2 preseason games, and I'm not going to be over dramatic, but I really do. I can already see a glaring discrepancy between how Darvin Ham and J.J. Redick coached. Some of the players have even talked about just the energy around the organization and practices. It's like everybody looks very upbeat, and even some of the sets that I saw J.J. Redick running in the game the other night, like I remember even the game against the Timberwolves, like the very first game that he ran, it was like a college type setup where he was trying to get a wide open 3 in the corner. So stuff like that I never saw from Darvin Ham. But realistically, I do think that the Lakers can honestly at least get the 7th seed. I feel like if Jared Vanderbilt can come back, if Christian Wood can give us some solid minutes, and the Lakers, they'll always try to, potentially be in the talks of making a trade or 2 at the deadline. I just still see LeBron's motivated, man. He's unstoppable. And I feel like also having Bronny on that team now, they're going to want to be successful. Like, he doesn't want to just be a play-in team. And also, too, I just feel like J.J. Redick, he's setting up the offense for Anthony Davis to have an MVP type season. But it's all going to come down to, people staying healthy, because that's been the problem for the Lakers the last 2 years. Like, anytime it seems like we get on a roll, like, either AD will get injured. Last year he got to play a ton, but like we'll be missing key players like Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent. He was out pretty much the entire season last year. But if everybody can stay healthy, I just feel like we can at least get the 7th seed in the Western Conference. I think our ceiling though is the 5th or 6th seed realistically. But I want to get your thoughts too on that.
Yeah. I just have to. I don't want to sound indifferent because I'm a Lakers fan. But I do agree with you. I think we can avoid the play-in game this year because I think JJ Redick, um, to your point, has made some adjustments. One of the things that I thought was interesting was, I think he said we got off like 40 3-pointers,
Yeah.
and he said I'd like for us to get to 50 or 60. I was like, what? Um, which is cool, because he also said that if he could, he would have 5 Gabe Vincents. Now, maybe he knows something I don't know. Maybe he knows something I don't know because if you're going to shoot 63s, then doggone it, you need somebody on the team who can actually shoot.
Yeah.
Gabe Vincent last year, that dude, okay, I have to just say it. He's in the Chandler Parsons book of I'm getting paid and doing absolutely nothing in the NBA. That's kind of where he fit in. And injuries, I get it. But I'm gonna need for him to really step up this year. I like the flow. I like the offense. I've seen the adjustments that are being made. I also noticed yesterday, whenever AD went out, he actually did a little bit of a different setup lineup with LeBron being almost like a Draymond
Yep.
with that team, and he kept Rui Hachimura in the game. He
Yep.
kept him in. A lot of times last year, Darvin Ham wasn't doing that. I think that one of the X factors will be Vandy. I really need for that dude to stay healthy, because to your point, not okay. Our Achilles heel. No pun intended.
Yeah, facts.
God knows I need to knock on wood if I say that with our team. Our Achilles heel last year was injuries.
Yeah.
And I think if dudes can stay healthy, I think Redick is putting together an actual offense that can win some of the games that we should have won last year when we had a lead and we could never maintain that lead. So it'll be interesting to see if we make any kind of moves because Rob Pelinka was just as stagnant as
he was at Disney World this whole off season.
Yeah, and he was at Disney World asleep. So it'll be interesting to see, but I do believe that we can avoid the play-in game this year.
Yeah.
I think to your point, realistically, we could be a 7th. If we're really, 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 really get in a flow, we could actually potentially get a 6th seed, but that's just going to be dependent upon health and whether or not we make a move, right after Christmas time. So it's going to be fun to watch. Very quickly, while we're on that subject, it was a big deal to see Bronny and
Yeah,
Bron
that
on the court at the same time.
that was insane. I was about to talk about that. So I was just gonna say, like, first off, you love it or hate it, which I love it. I'm all for it. But the fact that LeBron it just shows you like his longevity. And we're not gonna get into this whole GOAT talk because we might save that for another podcast episode. But the fact that his brother was sharing the court with his son, it just puts things into perspective. It's just like LeBron's longevity, his greatness. And one thing I will say is I feel like people are already saying, well, Bronny's not going to be good, and you got to give it time. I feel like, honestly, realistically, too, like, Bronny's in the right situation. If he was in college, like, he'd still be able to develop, but it's like now he's around NBA trainers. He's around his dad. He's around, like, a coach. Like, J.J. Redick's already talked about that. He really loves Bronny. And I will say one thing I already like about Bronny is, and it's like, something they were already talking about for his NBA comp, he's already a fantastic defender, and he wants to play defense. A lot of guys don't want to play defense in the NBA, so it's like if he can continue to develop on the offensive end, which I feel like he will be able to long term, his defense is already there. So I feel like he can be a great 3-and-D type of guard long term in the NBA, and I'm glad the Lakers have him because even after LeBron's done playing and stuff, having a 3-and-D guard like that is still very rare. So we'll see. And then the last player I was going to highlight too, which I feel like can be another X factor for the Lakers, is from what I've been seeing is Dalton Connect. Like, me and you were really excited about that draft pick, and I'm still shocked that he even fell, in the Lakers' lap at, pick 17. But I feel like Dalton Connect, man, if he can, stay healthy, people forget, he's already like 23 years old. So, he's already, I feel like, more developed and, are ready to play type of NBA player compared to some of these other rookies. So I feel like he can, continue to make an immediate impact for the Lakers, especially with some of the different lineup combinations that I feel like JJ Redick's going to run. So, yeah.
I was gonna say that's so if we're gonna shoot 50 to 63s, he needs to make sure that he's running plays to get connect some shots.
Yeah.
Lots of them because that's the guy that I think, can be a surprise. He's ready. He's NBA ready now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think JJ Redick will use him the right way, and that'll be an opportunity for us to up those number of threes that we take. So it'll be interesting to see how he uses him. I think he'll use him the right way.
I completely agree.
Well, those media day pictures of Bronny and Bron really moved the needle for me. So getting into that this week, Jameson, what moved the needle for you?
I'm gonna be honest. It was two things, and one of them is actually a repeat move the needle. The first one's gonna be Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. It just feels like every week the brother's making a top 10 Sports Center type play. Like he just had another one-handed touchdown, this past weekend. But I just feel like, he moved the needle for me. And also to Ohio State's another scary team that people, they're already ranked high, but if he's going to continue to be able to make plays like that, Will Howard's been fantastic at quarterback. That really moved the needle for me. And then second, the repeat person is Ashton Genty, man. Like, this brother already has 16 touchdowns on the season, man. Like, I'll be honest. I know I've been saying that Travis Hunter's the Heisman pick, but he really might mess around and be, the first Heisman running back winner in the last, 10 years. So, just huge shout out to Ashton Genty as well. But those were the two that moved the needle for me this past week.
Nice. What moved the needle for me this week was Coco Gauff.
Oh yeah.
She became the first American. Yeah, she won the China Open. She became the first American woman to win the China Open since Serena Williams did it in 2013. That's a big deal. She's only 20 years old, and she's actually the tournament's youngest champion in 14 years.
Wow.
So shout out to Coco Gauff. She's already won a ridiculous amount of tournaments, and she's only 20 years old. And is only getting better. So that's what moved the needle for me this week.
That's tough. 20 years old makes me feel old. But wrapping it up for this episode, the Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football predictions for the both of you.
Yeah, so Monday night game tonight, we have the Chiefs versus the Saints. As good as the Saints have looked, honestly, it's hard for me to pick against, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on primetime football. So I'm just going to rock out with the Chiefs for that game. And then for the Thursday night game, we have the 49ers. Who is it? The 49ers versus somebody. I'm trying to think.
Seahawks.
Yeah, 49. Appreciate that. The 49ers versus Seahawks. I'm going to take the 49ers on that, especially given the way they lost to the Cardinals, this past Sunday. I think they'll bounce back, and I think they'll end up winning that game.
Yeah, so for tonight's game, I'm picking the Chiefs because they're not going to let the Chiefs lose. Do I sound like I'm a little bit, there's some haterade there? Absolutely. They're not going to let the Chiefs lose on a Monday night game. If they lose tonight, I will be shocked.
Yeah.
Because the Chiefs will be there along with, they'll have some other folks with Chiefs jerseys on. Those are called the refs. So I have the Chiefs winning, and believe it or not, I'm going to take the Seahawks for Thursday night.
It's a good pick.
Yeah, and the reason I'm picking them is because I think Geno Smith is very quietly having an all-star year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not saying he's in the MVP race, not yet anyway, but quiet as kept. He's doing it, and he's making some timely plays when they need to be made. He's taking care of the football. Kenneth Walker III is the X factor for me. He had a decent game yesterday, but I think if he has a game like he had a couple of weeks ago, I could actually see them beating the 49ers because they still have some guys injured, coming back from injury.
They still even have McCaffrey.
Exactly. I'm not sure that they're going to have McCaffrey for the rest of the year. That's kind of what's floating out there. So those are my predictions, and yeah.
Well, sounds good. That was another fantastic episode. Huge shout out to everybody that's listened so far, man. Episode 3. I'm really excited for the future of the podcast, and really excited for next week. But really big upcoming week in sports. So we'll be back next week to recap and cover it all.
Appreciate it, Jameson. Shout out again to Zach, our producer. We'll see you next time on the J&J Podcast.